So if you're looking for one of the cheapest Pro iPhones money can buy, you will often come across iPhone 11 Pros in used or refurbished condition for around $300/pounds. And so for those wondering whether you should still buy this, here are my thoughts. Now if you want my conclusion up front, I would say that yes, for the most part the 11 Pro is definitely still worth it. There are some caveats of course, because it's an older iPhone, but the overall package here is still pretty solid, not gonna lie. So beginning with the design, oh my god, it's so bloody refreshing using this. I know everyone, including myself, went gaga for the flat edges with the iPhone 12, but in hindsight, this was a terrible decision. You see, while flat sides are fine on smaller devices, like the iPhone 5 and more recently the iPhone 13 mini, it's an ergonomic mess on something as ginormous as the 14 Pro Max, and even the regular Pros, because 6.1 inches is not small. That sounds sus out of context, but anyways, using the 11 Pro again was refreshing for my very medium-sized hands, because you have a phone that feels just right size-wise, and more importantly, we have those wonderful rounded edges that sits perfectly in the palm of your hand. And so I'm hoping one day we go back to this design, but till then guys, if you're someone who despises flat edges, this is the most recent iPhone model with rounded edges. And so if you care about comfort, yes, the 11 Pro is perfect in this aspect. And by the way, would like to remind you guys, like this video and subscribe for more content like this, it would be appreciated. The bezels definitely are starting to show their age. It's crazy how we thought these were razor thin back in the day, but compared to newer iPhones, yes, they're a little chunky, I can't lie, but it doesn't make the phone unusable. In fact, I thought the massive notch would bother me after using newer iPhones with the Island, but to be honest, I quickly forgot about the notch. Also, this was the first iPhone to introduce the frosted back finish. Also, the logo moved to the middle with the iPhone 11 series, and so all of this helps the phone still feel fresh. Another great thing about the 11 Pro's design is undoubtedly the camera module. Once again, it's crazy how pissed we got at Apple for this oven stove design and how ginormous it was, but if only we knew back then how bad things were gonna get. Compared to newer iPhones, the 11 Pro's camera module looks very clean, I can't lie, and so overall I still very much like the design. Color choices were also pretty nice with the 11 Pro. Midnight green is still one of my favorite shades of all time, and barring the gold that was a bit too rose goldish for my liking, these colors are miles better than what Apple's currently offering with the 15 Pro, which are basically 4 different shades of grey. By the way, this phone also offers IP68 support, so you can splash some water on this and it will totally be fine. The fun fact for you guys, this was the last iPhone to launch without MagSafe, and I do very much miss not having that. Now let's talk about the display. So obviously this iPhone came in 2 sizes. There was a 6.5 inch Pro Max, but I'm testing the 5.8 inch size, and this was the first iPhone to use the Super Retina XDR branding because it offered a max of 1200 nits of brightness when watching HDR content, and this display still looks amazing. Now I do wish brightness outdoors was better because it's only offering 800 nits in that aspect, but apart from that you have great colors, great viewing angles, solid contrast ratio, and there's really not much to complain about with this OLED panel. You do miss out on 120Hz, but as I've said in recent videos about the regular iPhone 15, I don't think this is a massive issue because iOS is pretty smooth as is, and let's be honest, only nerds care about this. As for the display size, it's a shame Apple's ditched this size option because it really felt like the perfect size in my opinion. The mini was always a bit too small and the 6.1 inch iPhones were fine, but 5.8 inches felt perfect because it gave you the best of both worlds. It's compact enough for one-handed use, and yet still big enough for watching media on the phone. So please Timothy, I beg you, bring this back because it would be a dream come true for me. Also fun fact, this was the first iPhone to kill 3D touch, which was a little controversial back then, but I think it was the right move. Now I know people want their phone to give them the tingles, but here's the thing guys, removing the 3D touch layer allowed Apple to give us much larger batteries inside these phones, and while I will be talking about battery life later on, but to summarize, the 11 Pro was a massive upgrade in this department, and ultimately battery life is by far the most important factor of a smartphone, so the trade-off was worth it. Moving on to performance, there's A13 with 4 gigs of RAM here, and there's not much for me to say here because as one would expect, performance is still very solid. I can't remember the last time a modern iPhone felt slow to use. Apple's chipsets have been fast for years at this point, And while all this performance can seem overkill, the great thing about Apple chucking in ludicrous amounts of performance is that when these phones get older, they do age very gracefully. And well, the iPhone 11 is 4 years old at this point, but it definitely doesn't feel like it. Even with RAM management, I rarely come into issues. So yes, this definitely is still a major reason to buy this phone. The performance is still great even today. Where you do feel the age, however, are the cameras on this phone, because while they're solid, I would say they're falling behind newer iPhones. The main sensor's fine, but you definitely do get a lot more detail with the larger sensors. On newer iPhone models, they're letting much more light. But while the main lens is still decent, it's the ultra-wide and the telephoto which are subpar at best. I kind of forgot how soft the ultra-wide used to be, but yes, it needs a ton of light to come up with a good shot, and the same goes for the telephoto lens. In fact, here's another fun fact for you guys. Old iPhones used to just crop into the main sensor in low light and medium conditions for that 2x option instead of using the telephoto, so that should tell you guys how iffy this sensor was. Selfies are also fine. This was the first iPhone to gain a 12 megapixel sensor on the front, but again, compared to newer iPhones, it does fall behind because there's no autofocus. So overall, it's a decent experience, but it's nothing special. The only real advantage this iPhone has over newer models is that you can disable Smart HDR if needed, which is honestly something I would like to do on the 14 Pro because while Smart HDR5 on the 15 has fixed things, Smart HDR4 on the 13 and 14 were a little iffy at times with the overprocessed images. Coming back to the 11 Pro though, I feel like I'm being a little harsh on this because at the end of the day, I should emphasize, for a device that came out in 2019, these are pretty solid shots, and I guess I shouldn't be comparing it to new iPhones in the first place. If anything, I should compare it to what you can find for this kind of price. And well, apart from Pixel 8 phones that can be found for $300, I don't think you'll be able to find a better camera experience for this kind of price. Also, unlike the Pixel, this has very solid video footage, which as a content creator, I'm always a fan of with iPhones. And so yes, for this kind of price, it's good enough on the whole. Also, I just realized this was the last high-end iPhone to not include the LiDAR sensor, but there is a reason I just realized this, and that's because it's a pointless sensor that doesn't do much on newer iPhone models. This also does not offer some of the fancier camera features like photonic engine and cinematic modes, but this was the first iPhone to offer night mode, and I can't lie guys, it still cranks out respectable shots, though unlike newer iPhones, the front-facing camera doesn't support this. Also, do you remember Slofies? No? Well, I don't blame you, because that was introduced with the iPhone 11, but everyone forgot about it a week after the phone was released. Now moving on to connectivity, this is probably one of the bigger weaknesses of the 11 Pros. So for one, there is no 5G on this, and yes, I know there's going to be comments saying 5G is overrated, who cares? Well, I used to think the same, but to be honest, the tech has been out for 3 years and has become widespread enough that I do appreciate the faster speeds on newer models that this phone lacks. But the bigger issue with the 11 Pro is the absolutely horrific Intel modem. Even if you're fine with 4G speeds, you likely won't be getting that many bars of signal on this phone because Intel modems suck big time. I remember how bad reception was on the iPhone 11 back in the day, and if there's one thing I do appreciate with newer devices, it's the fact we have much more reliable Qualcomm modems that always work reliably. Now, does this make the phone unusable? No, of course not. But going back to this phone, I did pick up on the worst modem, and so do bear that in mind if you're considering this device. Now, this also was the first iPhone to introduce U1, which does work well with AirTags, and you also get Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5 support, which are the usual specs you would come to expect for a somewhat modern iPhone. This does have Lightning, which I know Apple just killed off with the iPhone 15, but considering a lot of existing iPhone users already have tons of Lightning cables, this could actually be seen as a benefit. Face ID as always is fantastic on this device, it works very reliably, and as I said, I'm not bothered by the notch, it's completely fine, and the same goes for the speakers and mics, they're still excellent, and here's a sample for you guys. Here's a quick mic test on the iPhone 11 Pro. Let me know how this sounds. And now we come to our final category, which is battery life. Back in the day, the 11 Pro was a champ in this department, but unfortunately batteries degrade over time, and this phone in particular has 80% battery health, and so yes, it's not so fantastic anymore. Now to be fair, you could quite easily get the incredibly solid endurance back by replacing the battery in this, and if you do buy a refurbished iPhone anyways, those usually have pretty new batteries inside, so yes, on the whole, I would say battery life is something you should not have to worry about. It's still very solid. So overall guys, as I said earlier, if you do find it for a good price, the 11 Pro is still undoubtedly worth buying. As long as you're aware of the cons I delved into for sub $300, this is a very solid iPhone, but I will say guys, it could be worth spending the extra on a refurbished or used iPhone 12 instead, because it has 5G MagSafe and also the much better Qualcomm modem. Anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comments guys, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and thank you for watching.